Worked dead-end jobs. Since 16, bought my own house without a penny from family. Then, my entitled parents sued me for stealing my brother's opportunities because I refused to pay his tuition and hand him my house. All right, Reddit. Figured I'd share something that went down in my life. Long story short, I've been on my own since I was a teenager, while my younger brother got treated like royalty. I busted my ass, built a career, and bought myself a house. Thought my family might be proud. Turns out they had other plans. What started as petty comments turned into something way bigger than I ever expected. I'm Matthew, 27 male. But the story really starts when I was a teenager. My house growing up wasn't normal in the way you'd think. Most parents do things for their kids because that's what parents do, right? Mine treated it like a tab they were running. If they gave you lunch money, that went on the scoreboard. If they gave you a ride to practice, on the scoreboard. Even stuff like doctor visits somehow counted as a debt. They never said it straight out, but it was always there, hanging in the air. Months later, they'd bring up how they covered something, like I was supposed to pay them back in loyalty, gratitude, or straight cash. Imagine living in a house where love had a receipt. That was my childhood. And then there was Andrew, 24 male. My little brother, 3 years younger, golden child stamped on his forehead since day one. Everything revolved around him. He got private soccer training, travel teams, camps that cost thousands, gear that looked like it was pulled off a pro athlete's rack. Didn't matter how much it cost. If Andrew wanted it, my parents somehow always found the money. Me? I was the you don't need it kid. If I asked for anything beyond the bare minimum, I'd get hit with either we can't afford that, or if you want extras, go get a job. Funny thing is, we weren't broke. Both my parents had decent jobs. They just decided Andrew was the investment worth making, and I was the side project they didn't care to fund. So, I got the message loud and clear early on. At 16, while Andrew was out on weekends scoring goals and having my parents cheer him on from the sidelines, I was bussing tables at a greasy diner. I'd come home reeking of fries and bleach water, while Andrew strutted in with shiny cleats and jerseys, dropping his bag like he'd just come from the World Cup. I didn't mind the work, though. It gave me something Andrew never had, my own money. Every paycheck was mine. No scoreboard, no fake help with strings attached. Just me earning it. A year later, I picked up another gig after school. A local garage owner took me on part-time, mostly sweeping floors and grabbing tools. But he noticed I wasn't useless with my hands. Before long, I was changing oil, swapping out brake pads, even learning diesel engines. I'd go home with black nails and stained shirts, but I felt proud in a way Andrew never could. My hands told a story his metals never would. My parents didn't see it that way. If I asked them for advice about work, they'd brush it off like it wasn't real. My mom once said, Matthew thinks he's so independent now that he's got pocket money. Pocket money. I was paying for my own school supplies, saving for tuition, covering my phone bill. Meanwhile, Andrew was blowing through allowance money on video games and getting praise for being dedicated to his sport. That's the part that stung most. Every time I accomplished something, it got minimized. It wasn't just favoritism, it was favoritism with a twist. They criticized me for standing on my own. My dad once told me I was acting like I didn't need family because I'd refused to ask them for gas money. Meanwhile, Andrew could quit anything, and they'd say he was still figuring things out. That's when it really sunk in. I was never going to be on the same level as Andrew in their eyes. No matter how much I worked, no matter how independent I got, they'd find a way to spin it against me. If I leaned on them, I was weak. If I didn't lean on them, I was arrogant. So I stopped trying to win the game. I knew the scoreboard was rigged. Instead, I decided if I wanted something, I'd earn it myself. No debts, no receipts, no imaginary ledger hanging over my head. Just me. And that decision? That was the start of everything. Once high school was done, I didn't waste time pretending my parents were going to suddenly support me. I doubled down on the only thing I knew was solid: work. While Andrew was talking about maybe going to some fancy school on my parents' dime, I signed up for community college classes, mostly nights, sometimes mornings depending on the semester, and kept clocking hours at the garage. It was a grind. If classes were in the morning, I'd hit the shop at night. When they ran at night, I worked days. Weekends, I grabbed extra shifts. The owner tossed me more responsibility once he saw I wasn't just some kid killing time. That's where I really found my lane. Diesel work was tough, dirty, and paid better than quick oil changes. The kind of job where you come home covered in grease and feel like you actually earned it. Meanwhile, Andrew was finding himself. He tried college for one semester. Came back home with some story about how the professors didn't get him. My parents, of course, spun it into some poetic nonsense about how he just needed time. He's not like you, Matthew. He's got potential. Yeah, potential to quit every time life asked him to set an alarm clock. But me? I was stacking skills and stacking cash. Every overtime hour I could grab, I did. I lived cheap, barely spent anything beyond food and gas. I wasn't trying to flex, I was trying to build something. While Andrew was busy making excuses, I was building a future. At 19, I bought my first truck. It was a wreck when I found it, parked in some guy's yard with a for sale sign. Rust spots, dented panels, engine barely coughed. Andrew saw it and said, "Man, must be nice having money for a truck." I just stared at him. Money? The guy who got $1,000 cleats as a teen thought I magically had cash lying around? Nah. What I had was discipline. He didn't even recognize it. By 21, I'd finished my certification and was officially a diesel mechanic. That was when things started clicking. Trucks, buses, heavy equipment, they all needed someone who could keep them running. The jobs were steady and the paychecks were real. Every payday, the numbers in my account went up. Slowly, steadily, the savings grew. Back home, Andrew was still hopping between jobs. Stocking shelves one week, quitting the next because his manager didn't respect his vibe. Each time, my parents defended him. He just hasn't found his passion yet, right? Because passion pays rent. At 24, I landed a solid position with a heavy equipment company. Big contracts, bigger machines, and steady work. They liked me because I showed up, worked hard, didn't whine. By then, I had a system. Work, save, repeat. My truck was running smooth, my bills were always covered, and my savings account was getting healthier. I wasn't out partying every weekend or buying pointless junk. I wanted something bigger. I wanted proof that all the years of greasy hands and long hours were building towards something real. Andrew ? Still finding himself. Still leaning on my parents, still the golden child in their eyes. But I'd stopped caring about their scoreboard. I had my own now. And by 24, I was closer than ever to hitting a goal I'd been aiming at quietly for years. A home. My own place. Something that couldn't be taken away or minimized. And that's where things really started to shift. At 26, I finally pulled the trigger on something I'd been grinding toward since I was that 16-year-old kid smelling like fryer grease. My own house. Nothing insane. Just a solid 2-bedroom place with a yard, a garage big enough to work on my truck, and enough space to breathe. I didn't tell my family a word about it while I was looking. Call it paranoia, but I knew how they operated. If I even hinted at moving, I'd start hearing, "Andrew could live with you while he gets on his feet," or "Think about how much easier it'd be for everyone if you had space for the family." Yeah, no thanks. This wasn't a family commune. I wanted my own place. When I finally closed, I sat in that empty living room on the floor with cheap takeout, staring at the walls. It was quiet, no scoreboard, no guilt trips. Just me and the keys. That silence felt better than any cheering section my parents ever gave Andrew at a soccer game. A week later, against my better judgment, I invited them and Andrew over for dinner. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe for once they'd look at me and say, "Damn, you did this on your own. We're proud." Pathetic, I know. They showed up in their usual formation. Mom leading the charge, Dad behind her, Andrew dragging his feet like someone forced him. The second mom walked in, her eyes went wide. Not in pride, but like she was calculating square footage in her head. She ran her hand along the wall like she was testing for dust, peeked into the kitchen, and said, "These cabinets are nice. You know, if Andrew lived here, he'd probably need a bigger fridge." I raised an eyebrow. Good thing Andrew doesn't live here then. Dad gave one of his half chuckles, the kind that always came before a dig. "What, you rob a bank or something?" I replied, "If I did, I'd still be ahead of Andrew. At least then I'd have cash in hand." Andrew didn't even say hello. He stomped around the house like a kid casing a video game map. He peeked in the bedrooms, checked out the garage, then came back into the living room and shrugged. "It's all right, I guess." Kinda big for one person, though, isn't it? We sat down to eat. Steak, potatoes, salad. Nothing crazy, but way above diner food. I'd actually cooked it myself, which was probably another crime in their eyes. Mom chewed slowly, looking around between bites, and finally dropped the line I knew was coming. "It's nice, Matthew, but don't you think it's a bit much for someone your age?" I set my fork down and smiled. Right, because clearly, the responsible move was to keep paying rent forever, while Andrew finds himself. Andrew smirked. "You probably could have helped out with other things instead of splurging on this." "Other things?" I asked. "What? Like buying you some work ethic?" "Not sure that's for sale." Mom gasped like I'd sworn at the Pope. "Matthew, that's not fair. Your brother has been looking into going back to school. You know how expensive that is. Yeah, I said. I also know how expensive this thing called responsibility is. I've been paying it since I was 16. Dad chimed in, muttering, family helps family. I shot him a look. Funny, because when I was working double shifts at the garage to pay tuition, I don't remember any family showing up with a scholarship. Guess the rule only goes one way, huh? Andrew scowled. You don't get it. You've got all this now, and I'm stuck at home. I gestured around. All this? A house with mismatched furniture and a lawn I still mow myself? This is called grinding, Andrew. You should try it sometime. It's crazy. You show up, people give you money, and then you buy stuff without begging your older brother. Mom sighed dramatically, putting her fork down like she was in a soap commercial. We just thought, now that you have this big house, you could chip in a little to give him a head start. I laughed. Not polite laughter, the real sarcastic kind. Oh, my mistake. I didn't realize mortgages came with a sponsor your sibling option. Must have been hidden in the fine print next to the property taxes. That shut them up for maybe 5 seconds. Then Dad leaned back, arms crossed. Don't act like you got here without us. We raised you. We made sacrifices, too. Sacrifices? I asked, leaning forward. You mean how you gave Andrew private coaching while I bought my own sneakers? Or how I worked nights to cover school while you covered his beer money? Yeah, real noble sacrifices. The silence got heavier. Mom tried to pull the guilt card again. Don't be selfish, Matthew. He's your brother. He deserves a fair shot. Fair shot? I snapped. He's had more shots than a shooting range. College, jobs, you name it. He dropped the ball every time. Me not paying his tuition isn't unfair. It's reality finally catching up. Andrew slammed his fork down. You just think you're better than me. No, I said calmly. I don't think I'm better. I know I'm better than you. That was the moment I saw it on their faces. They weren't proud. They weren't even neutral. They were bitter. My success wasn't a family win to them. It was a debt they thought I owed. They finished dinner quick after that. Andrew sulked in the corner like someone stole his Xbox. Dad refused to look at me, and Mom gave me that passive-aggressive hug at the door. She squeezed my arm and whispered, We'll talk about this again. I pulled back, met her eyes, and said flatly, No, we won't. I shut the door behind them, locked it, and stood there in the quiet. I'd invited them hoping for pride, maybe even respect. Instead, all I got was entitlement, excuses, and the confirmation that no matter what I did, they'd always find a way to make it about Andrew. That dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it was the warning shot of the war they were about to start. The following week, my phone started blowing up like I'd signed up for telemarketing spam. Mom would call during work, during dinner, even late at night. It was never, how are you doing, Matthew? It was always, Andrew's been looking at programs, but tuition is just impossible right now. Isn't it such a shame when people in the family have the means to help and just don't? Translation. Open your wallet, Matthew. Andrew needs a bailout. I kept calm at first. Mom, Andrew's tuition is not my responsibility. He's a grown man. He can get loans, work study, jobs. Like the rest of us. She didn't like that answer. Next day, Dad called, playing his usual role of backup singer. Family helps family. You've forgotten where you came from. I laughed. Click. He hung up. It didn't stop. Every conversation turned into a guilt trip. Mom would fake cry on the phone, heavy breathing like she was auditioning for a soap opera. You're tearing this family apart. Your brother feels like you want him to fail. Want him to fail? The guy failed before I was even old enough to legally drink. All I did was refuse to keep paying for the highlight reel. Then came Andrew's text. We need to talk. Come by. Against my better judgment, I went. Maybe he'd actually grown a spine and wanted to hash it out man to man. When I showed up, though, it was worse than I thought. Mom and Dad were there, too, sitting at the kitchen table like they were staging an intervention. Papers spread everywhere. College brochures, tuition breakdowns, even a handwritten payment plan. And not for Andrew. No, for me. I laughed out loud. You seriously made a payment plan? For my money? For him? Mom gave me that sharp look, the one that was supposed to make me cower. This isn't a joke, Matthew. This is his future. If you care about family, you'll do this. Andrew leaned back, arms crossed, zero shame. It's not like you don't have the money. You bought a whole house, man. Why should you get to have all that while I'm stuck here? I stared at him. Because I worked. You quit. Repeatedly. You can't even hold a part-time job longer than a gym membership trial. And you think I should pay for round 2 of your college tour? Nah. Dad muttered. Don't be disrespectful. Disrespectful, I snapped. What's disrespectful is treating me like an ATM because Golden Boy here wasted every chance handed to him. You raised him like the world owed him something. Congratulations. He believes it. The look on Andrew's face was priceless. Smug 1 second, red the next. I stood up. Not a single cent. Find someone else to sponsor your career reboot. I walked out, leaving their proposal still spread out like some parody of Shark Tank. I figured they'd stew for a while, maybe stop talking to me for a bit. I didn't think they'd escalate. But 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Official letterhead, legal jargon all over it. My hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from rage. My parents, my own parents, had filed a civil complaint against me. The claims? Promissory estoppel and unjust enrichment. Basically, they were trying to argue I had promised to help Ryan with school, and he relied on it, and that I had been enriched by their sacrifices growing up, so I somehow owed it back now. In plain English, nonsense. Ryan was an adult. I never promised him a cent, and every dime I earned came from my own work. But that didn't stop them from twisting it on paper like I had blocked him from education. Like refusing to pay his tuition was the same as stealing from him. I must have read it 5 times. My parents had actually lawyered up against me. And the cherry on top? The settlement amount they were demanding was almost identical to the tuition cost from those brochures on the kitchen table. Subtle, right? But they didn't stop there. They even tacked on emotional damages, claiming Andrew had suffered because I flaunted my success in his face. In other words, I worked hard, bought a house, and it hurt his feelings. That's when the real games began. Mom started calling daily, rotating between sweet, angry, and weepy like she was trying on personalities. One day, Matthew, there's still time to fix this. Just pay, and we'll drop it. Next day, your brother is devastated. He feels unloved. Do you really want that guilt on your shoulders? I told her flat out, Mom, the only guilt I feel is for answering this call. Meanwhile, Andrew was busy running his pity campaign online, posting vague quotes like, some people only care about themselves, even if it ruins others' lives. Sad emojis, inspirational memes about loyalty, all that fake deep nonsense. His buddies and cousins who didn't know the full story chimed in, that's so messed up, bro. Stay strong. Oh, Andrew was loving it. Playing victim in public, milking sympathy, while his lawyer was trying to rob me behind the scenes. It got even better. At a cousin's birthday party, my aunt pulled me aside. I just wish you and Andrew could work this out. He's been so down since you bought that house. I blinked. Down since I bought the house? Did he buy the house and forget to tell me? She frowned. Well, your parents said you refused to help him after making all that money. There it was. They weren't just dragging me to court. They were rewriting history for the entire family. No mention of me bussing tables at 16. No mention of me paying my own way through school. Just the family-friendly edit. Matthew is rich and selfish. It stung. I wasn't just being painted as selfish. I was being erased. Years of sacrifice, long nights, calloused hands, and the only narrative that mattered was Matthew refused to share. The low point? My mom actually called my realtor, pretended to be a family friend asking if the house might be available soon. My realtor, suspicious, pressed her, then documented the whole call and forwarded me the notes. Mom hinted I might not be able to keep it much longer, and it would be a shame if it went to waste when another family member could use it. Translation: they wanted my house. Not just my money. My house. I confronted Mom over the phone. Why did you call my realtor? Her voice was syrupy sweet. I was just looking out for the family. If things don't go your way in court, it would be better if the house stayed with someone in the family instead of strangers. You know Andrew would take good care of it. I clenched my jaw. So you're already planning for me to lose before the case is even over? It's not about guilt, Matthew. It's about doing what's right for your brother. He's been through so much. I laughed bitterly. He's been through every opportunity you handed him while I've been on my own since I was a teenager. I earned this house. You never helped me. Not once. And now you think you can just take it? Don't be dramatic, she snapped. You wouldn't be where you are without how we raised you. This is your chance to give back. Give back. The same words she used when I was 16, and she tried to take half my paycheck for household expenses. The same words when I refused to co-sign a car loan for Andrew at 21. To them, my success was never mine. It was a debt they thought they could collect whenever Andrew needed a bailout. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. That lawsuit wasn't just about tuition. It was about leverage. They wanted to strip me of the one thing that symbolized all those years of grinding, my home. And they were willing to drag me through court, smear me to the family, and rewrite my entire life story just to get it. Fine. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But not on their terms. The lawsuit was grinding forward like a slow-motion car wreck. Every time my lawyer forwarded me new filings, I'd see my parents' names and Andrew's name in black and white. And it hit the same every time. These people weren't just family anymore. They were opponents. And while I wasn't about to roll over, I couldn't pretend it wasn't eating at me. Nights got rough. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every move in my head. The stress showed. Work wasn't any better. I'd catch myself zoning out in meetings. Deadlines slipping. Mistakes creeping in. My boss pulled me aside. Matthew, I don't know what's going on, but you've never been this checked out. I didn't spill the whole family drama, but I told him it was a legal mess. He gave me this look, half concerned, half warning. Get it handled. You're too good at what you do to lose it over this. That was the gut check I needed. They weren't just coming for my money and my house. They were trying to bleed me dry until I cracked. And if I let that happen, I'd lose way more than a lawsuit. So I snapped back into gear. First move, shut them out. No more answering mom's guilt-drenched voicemails. No more picking up dad's lectures about family helping family. No more letting Andrew smirk on my porch. My lawyer handled every single call, email, or letter. If they wanted to talk to me, they'd have to do it through someone who billed by the hour. Next step, fortify. I went through every account I had. Savings, retirement, credit. Changed passwords, added extra security, froze anything that smelled off. I pulled my credit report to make sure they hadn't tried something shady, like opening accounts under my name. I wasn't leaving a single window open for them to climb through. The biggest step was going on offense. Quietly. I hired a private investigator. Not for anything shady, just the truth. I wanted to know exactly what Andrew had been doing while he cried broke, and whether my parents had a history of pulling these family sacrifices on other relatives. 2 weeks later, I had a folder thick enough to choke on. Inside, screenshots from Andrew's private social media, where he was showing off new electronics, road trips, even test driving cars while supposedly too poor to buy textbooks. There were property records showing my parents once pressured my late aunt to sell them land dirt cheap, which explained why that side of the family never looked them in the eye at reunions. Every page was proof of entitlement, stacked on top of entitlement. Meanwhile, my lawyer was building his own arsenal. He dug up Andrew's employment history, the trail of short-term jobs he'd quit with excuses about bad management. He found records of Andrew's failed first attempt at college, complete with tuition refunds. We stacked it all in a neat timeline that screamed one thing. Andrew had every opportunity, and he squandered all of it. I didn't broadcast any of this. Outwardly, I played it cool. If relatives asked how I was doing, I'd shrug and say, handling it. That was all. Let them think I'd gone quiet. Maybe even broken down. Let my parents think their pressure was working. That's what they wanted. Me cornered, desperate, begging. But behind the scenes, I was loading the chamber. Every voicemail mom left about me being selfish. Every pity post Andrew made. Every legal filing where they twisted reality. I saved it all. Proof wasn't just defense. It was ammo. And here's the funny thing. The quieter I got, the louder they got. Mom started calling aunts and uncles, painting me as the villain. Andrew posted more cryptic trash online, trying to set up his sob story. My parents even tried to drag my grandmother into it, feeding her lines like Matthew's forgotten family. She left me a voicemail saying, "Sweetheart, maybe if you sent your brother a little something, we could all move on." That voicemail went straight into the folder. They thought silence meant defeat. In reality, I was buying time. Time to secure my life, time to build my case, and time to let them dig their own grave deeper. Because the more they talked, the more evidence they gave me. And when I finally moved, it wouldn't just be defense, it would be checkmate. The first piece landed in my inbox on a Tuesday afternoon. Subject line from my lawyer: opposing counsel error. Inside was a forwarded thread where their lawyer had accidentally copied my attorney on what was clearly meant to be private. Buried halfway down was an email from my mother, polite on the surface, rotten underneath. We should insure Matthew's property as part of any agreement. Andrew already has someone ready to list it once it's transferred. That will give him a clean restart. Not tuition, not opportunities. My house, in writing. I called my lawyer. He sounded like he'd just found the golden ticket. "This isn't just leverage," he said. "This is intent. They're not asking for support. They're trying to seize an asset." "Good," I said. "Let's make them read it out loud." 2 days later, my PI delivered the second bomb. A clean audio recording of Andrew at a bar, bragging to his buddy. I figured it out. Mom and Dad are pushing the case so the house ends up in my name. Once it's mine, I'll sell and be set. Crystal clear. No misinterpretation, just entitlement in stereo. We packaged everything. My tax returns since I was a teenager, pay stubs from diner days, diesel certs, tuition receipts, down payment paperwork, a full timeline that screamed, I built this alone. Opposite that, their email and Andrew's voice in black and white. I didn't need to talk tough. The paper would do the punching. Pre-trial conference day. Neutral building, neutral room, neutral art. Like they designed it to make no one comfortable. My parents sat flanking Andrew like a royal court, smug expressions locked in. Mom gave me a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Dad avoided my gaze like I was already a disappointment. Andrew leaned back in his chair, smirk ready to go. The mediator began with pleasantries, then nodded for opening positions. Their lawyer started, spinning his little story about family obligations, reasonable support, and a brother's selfishness ruining another's future. I stayed silent. No eye rolls, no sighs. If someone is digging their own grave, you don't grab the shovel. Then it was our turn. My lawyer slid a slim binder across the table. This is a verified record of my client's financial independence since age 16, employment history, tuition payments, and the purchase of his home. You'll notice not a single cent came from the plaintiffs. Andrew gave a little snort. My lawyer ignored it and flipped to the flagged tab. And here is an email from the plaintiffs themselves, confirming this lawsuit's real objective was to transfer the defendant's property into the plaintiff's name. Mom's face drained. Dad's jaw locked. Andrew leaned forward, reading like maybe he could rewrite it on the spot. Before they could regroup, my lawyer pressed a button. The recording played, Andrew's own voice filling the room. Mom and Dad are pushing the case so the house ends up in my name. Once it's mine, I'll sell and be set. Silence. You could hear the wall clock ticking. The mediator broke it. Do you wish to respond? Their lawyer whispered to them like a drowning man begging for a rope. Mom shook her head quickly. Dad stared down. Andrew muttered something that made his dad glare at him like, shut up. Finally, their lawyer said stiffly, my clients would like a moment to confer. They left the room. I sat there calm, hands folded, heartbeat steady. I didn't need to gloat. I already knew. It was over. 10 minutes later, they came back in, faces blank like they'd been coached not to react. Their lawyer cleared his throat. My clients are willing to withdraw the lawsuit, each party bearing its own costs. My lawyer didn't even blink. Unacceptable. That was it. The session froze. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad rubbed his temple. Andrew whispered furiously. Their lawyer leaned in again, desperate. But I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I'd already won the second they put their real motives in writing. The mediator closed his folder. We'll pause here. Pause. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and gave Andrew a look. Not angry, not smug, just final. You should have budgeted. Hopes are expensive. Then I walked out. Checkmate. That was the last word I needed to say in that conference room. From there, I let the silence do its work. But just because the case was dead didn't mean the aftermath was. If anything, that's where the real satisfaction kicked in. A week later, my lawyer forwarded me the apology letter my parents had signed. I read it once, then again, letting every line sink in. It was clumsy, like they'd tried to write it through gritted teeth, but it was still there in black and white. They admitted the lawsuit wasn't about Andrew's future. They admitted their statements about me had been false. They admitted the goal was to take my house and hand it to him. I didn't frame it. I didn't stick it on the fridge. But I kept it in a drawer, because sometimes having proof feels better than revenge. Then came the wire transfer. Full reimbursement of my legal costs, down to the last dime. I checked my account, saw the deposit sitting there, and smirked. They wanted to drain me, but in the end, they funded my defense. Now, here's where I decided to have a little fun. Not petty, not dramatic, just efficient. I forwarded the apology letter and the incriminating email chain to every relative who'd bought into their sob story. No explanations, no commentary, just the documents. The ripple was immediate. A cousin texted me, "Holy Saras, dude, I had no idea." Another, "So your parents actually tried to steal your house? Unreal." Even an uncle who hadn't spoken to me in months called just to say, "Well, they really stepped in it this time." Meanwhile, the family group chat, which I'd been quietly removed from months ago, exploded. Screenshots started leaking to me through people who wanted to stay neutral. Every time someone tried to defend my parents, another relative dropped a quote from the email or a snippet of Andrew's bragging audio. It turned into a digital firing squad, and I didn't lift a finger. Mom, once queen bee of the family spotlight, stopped showing up to gatherings. She couldn't handle the side eyes or the whispered questions. Dad shrank too. No more booming I know best voice. Just silence. Andrew, question mark. He took the hardest hit. His friends who used to hype him up online? Gone. No likes, no comments. Word spread fast that his plan to cash in on his brother had been exposed. I heard he moved out for a while, tried living with a buddy, but came crawling back to my parents when rent and bills slapped him in the face. The same guy who said my life was easier now couldn't even keep himself afloat without running home. The smugness he carried everywhere. Gone. When I ran into him at a family thing months later, he couldn't even look me in the eye. He mumbled a half-greeting and spent the rest of the night glued to his phone. Golden boy reduced to background noise. As for me, I went back to living. Work picked up. My circle of friends stayed tight. My house, the one they tried to paint as stolen potential, stood exactly where it belonged, under my name. I added a few upgrades to it too. New garage setup, better tools, little reminders that independence pays off when entitlement doesn't. I didn't cut off every relative, but I didn't go chasing reconciliation either. The ones who believed me? Fine. The ones who didn't? Their problem, not mine. I wasn't here to win a popularity contest. I was here to keep what I built. Sometimes at night, I sit on my porch and think back to that first dinner. I invited them, thinking maybe for once they'd be proud. Instead, they were already inventorying my life like it was theirs to claim. That dinner was the start of their downfall, not mine. And here's the part that makes me smile the most. In the end, they didn't just lose the case. They lost the story. The narrative they tried to control, selfish Matthew, poor Andrew, blew up in their faces. Everyone saw the receipts. Everyone heard the audio. There was no spinning it. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight dirty. I didn't need to beg anyone to see my side. I let the truth sit there and do what it always does. Expose the weak. So yeah, they wanted me to pay Andrew's tuition. They wanted my money. They wanted my house. Instead, they paid my lawyer, gave me proof of their own entitlement, and nuked their own reputation. Checkmate wasn't just in that conference room. It was in every awkward silence at family gatherings, every empty chair at Sunday lunches they stopped attending, every time Andrew had to explain why he was still broke while his selfish brother thrived. The scoreboard they used to keep on me? Burned. This house? Still mine. My life? Still mine. And no matter how much they tried to twist it, the fact was simple. I never needed them to win.